In the golden light of dawn, the palace of Azura awakened to the gentle song of birds and the soft rustle of silken fabrics. Within its walls, Princess Serwa stirred, her mind racing with the weight of her duties. As the eldest child of King Benene and Queen Lyra, she had been groomed from a young age to take on the responsibilities of ruling their kingdom. Serwa stretched, yawned, and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her slender figure was draped in a flowing white gown, embroidered with intricate patterns that shimmered like diamonds in the morning light. She rose, smoothing her hair, which cascaded down her back like a waterfall of night. A delicate silver circlet adorned her brow, symbolizing her status as future queen. As she made her way to the palace gardens, Serwa's thoughts turned to Prince Jaraga, the young man who had captured her heart. Their love was forbidden, a secret they shared in stolen moments whenever duty allowed. Jaraga was a prince from a neighboring kingdom, and his family had long been allies of Azura. Jaraga stood tall, with broad shoulders and piercing brown eyes that seemed to see right through Serwa's doubts. His dark skin glistened in the morning light, and his strong jawline spoke of a warrior's heritage. He wore a simple yet elegant white tunic, cinched at the waist with a leather belt. As they strolled along the garden paths, Serwa felt a sense of freedom she had never known before. For a brief moment, they were just two young people, lost in the beauty of the world around them. But their happiness was short-lived. As they reached the garden's edge, they encountered Chief Obina, a courtier with a reputation for cunning and ambition. His eyes narrowed as he gazed at Jaraga, his expression dripping with disdain. "You are an unsuitable suitor for our princess," Chief Obina sneered. "I will not stand idly by while she betrays her family's legacy." Serwa felt a shiver run down her spine as she watched the exchange between Jaraga and Chief Obina. She knew that their love was forbidden, but she also understood the risks they faced. "We mean no harm," Jaraga said calmly, his hand clasped firmly in Serwa's. "We will respect the royal family's wishes." Chief Obina snorted, his expression incredulous. "You think you can just waltz into our court and expect to be accepted? You are nothing but a prince from a rival kingdom, unworthy of our princess's hand." Serwa felt her anger rising as Chief Obina's words cut deep. She knew that their love was true, but she also understood the power dynamics at play. "We will not be swayed," Serwa declared firmly, meeting Chief Obina's gaze. "Our love is strong, and we will face any challenge that comes our way." Chief Obina's eyes flashed with anger, his face reddening as he turned to leave. As the courtier departed, Serwa felt a sense of unease settle within her. "We must be careful," Jaraga whispered, his voice low and urgent. "Chief Obina is not a man to be underestimated. We will need all our wits about us if we are to succeed." Serwa nodded, feeling a sense of determination rising within her. She knew that their love was worth fighting for, but she also knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger. As they walked in silence, Serwa's thoughts turned to her father, King Benene. Would he stand by her, or would he turn against her for loving a prince from a rival kingdom? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Serwa steeled herself for what was to come. She knew that their love would be tested in ways she could hardly imagine. And so, with Jaraga by her side, Serwa stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that their love would be the guiding force that shaped their destiny. But little did they know, their greatest challenge was yet to come. As the days passed, Serwa and Jaraga's love continued to grow stronger. They found solace in each other's company, often sneaking away from the palace to explore the surrounding countryside. The fresh air and open spaces seemed to bring them closer together, and they would spend hours walking hand in hand, talking about their dreams and aspirations. One day, as they were strolling through a lush green meadow, Jaraga stopped suddenly and turned to Serwa with a mischievous grin. "I have an idea," he said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Surwa raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What is it? Jaraga took her hand and led her to a small klebanenheg surrounded by tall trees. In the center of the klebaneg stood an old wooden cart, adorned with colorful ribbons and flowers. What's this? Surwa asked, her curiosity piqued. This is my idea, Jaraga said, his voice filled with pride. I've been working on it for weeks, and I think you're going to love it. Surwa's eyes widened as she approached the cart. It was beautifully crafted, with intricate carvings of African patterns and symbols. The cart was adorned with a beautiful velvet canopy, embroidered with gold thread. What is this, Jaraga? Surwa asked, her voice full of wonder. It's a surprise, Jaraga said, his eyes twinkling with mirth. But I think you'll see soon enough. Surwa's curiosity was piqued, and she couldn't wait to see what Jaraga had planned. She climbed onto the cart, and Jaraga followed suit, taking her hand in his. As they sat down, a group of musicians appeared from nowhere, playing lively music on traditional African instruments. The music was infectious, and soon Surwa found herself clapping along with the beat. Jaraga smiled, his eyes shining with happiness. This is for you, he said, his voice filled with emotion. I wanted to create a special moment just for us. The musicians began to sing a beautiful love song, their voices harmonizing in perfect unison. Surwa felt her heart swell with emotion as she looked into Jaraga's eyes. The music was so enchanting that Surwa forgot all about the danger and uncertainty that lay ahead. For a brief moment, they were just two young people, lost in the beauty of the world around them. As the song came to an end, Surwa turned to Jaraga with tears in her eyes. It's beautiful, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jaraga smiled, his face filled with happiness. I'm glad you like it, he said, taking her hand in his. But just as they were about to share a tender moment, a figure appeared on the horizon. Surwa's heart sank as she saw Chief Obina, his expression stern and disapproving. What is this nonsense? Chief Obina exclaimed, his voice dripping with disdain. A fake wedding ceremony? You think you can just pretend to be married to impress me? Surwa felt a wave of panic wash over her as she realized that Chief Obina had discovered their plan. Jaraga's face fell, and he stood up, his eyes blazing with anger. We are not pretending to be married, Surwa said, her voice firm. We love each other, and we want to spend the rest of our lives together. Chief Obina snorted, his expression incredulous. You're just a silly little princess playing at being in love. You'll come to your senses soon enough. Surwa felt her anger rising, but Jaraga's hand on her arm calmed her down. She took a deep breath and looked at Chief Obina with a sense of determination. We are not afraid of you, Surwa said, her voice steady. We will follow our hearts, no matter what obstacles we face. Chief Obina's expression turned red with rage, and he stormed off, leaving Surwa and Jaraga alone once again. As they sat down on the cart, holding hands and looking into each other's eyes, Surwa felt a sense of hope rising within her. Maybe, just maybe, they would be able to overcome the challenges ahead and live happily ever after. Jaraga smiled, his eyes filled with love and adoration. I promise you, my dear, he said, his voice filled with conviction. We will face whatever comes our way together. Surwa's heart swelled with emotion as she looked at Jaraga. She knew that their love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle, and she was grateful to have him by her side. But little did they know, their greatest challenge was yet to come. The king's advisors had been secretly plotting against them, and soon, the entire palace would be turned upside down. As Surwa and Jaraga sat on the cart, basking in the happiness of their love, a messenger arrived with a royal summons. The king requested their presence in the throne room immediately. Surwa felt a sense of trepidation wash over her as she looked at Jaraga. What could the king want? And what did it have to do with their love? We must go, Surwa said, her voice firm. Whatever the king wants, we will face it together. Jaraga nodded, his eyes filled with determination. Let's go, he said, taking her hand in his. As they stood up and walked towards the palace, Serwa felt a sense of hope rising within her. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something beautiful. As they walked into the throne room, Serwa and Jaraga were greeted by the king's stern expression. The room was filled with the king's advisors, who seemed to be waiting for something momentous. "Ah, my dear children," King Benene said, his voice firm but laced with a hint of sadness. "I have called you here today because I have some news that will affect your lives forever." Serwa felt a sense of trepidation wash over her as she looked at Jaraga's hand in hers. What could the king possibly want? "I have received an offer from the neighboring kingdom," King Benene continued, his eyes narrowing. "They wish to form an alliance with us, one that will bring great prosperity and peace to our lands." Jaraga's eyes widened as he looked at Serwa, a sense of excitement building in his chest. "But there is a catch," King Benene said, his expression stern. "The neighboring kingdom demands that we agree to marry off my daughter, Princess Odessa, to their prince, Prince Malachi." Serwa felt a wave of panic wash over her as she looked at the king's advisors. This was exactly what they had feared. "But, father," Serwa said, her voice firm, "we cannot allow that to happen. We love each other, and we want to spend our lives together." King Benene sighed, his expression filled with a mix of sadness and regret. "I know, my dear child, but this alliance is too important to ignore. The neighboring kingdom has offered us many gifts and concessions in exchange for their support." Jaraga stepped forward, his eyes locked on the king's. "We understand that the alliance is important, father," he said, his voice calm and steady. "But we cannot sacrifice our love for it. We will not marry Princess Odessa to Prince Malachi." The room fell silent as the king's advisors gasped in shock. King Benene looked at Serwa and Jaraga with a mix of disappointment and admiration. "I respect your decision," he said finally, his voice softening. "But I must do what is best for our kingdom. We will consider their proposal and see if we can come to an agreement." As the king's advisors began to murmur among themselves, Serwa felt a sense of hope rising within her. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to save their love. Over the next few days, Serwa and Jaraga worked tirelessly to convince the neighboring kingdom that their alliance would be better served if they agreed to marry them instead of Princess Odessa. They presented their case with passion and conviction, but it seemed like no one was listening. Finally, on the eve of the royal ball, King Benene called a private meeting with Serwa and Jaraga. "My dear children," he said, his voice filled with regret, "I have been thinking a lot about this alliance, and I realize that it's not just about politics. It's about our love for each other and the happiness we can bring to our kingdom." Serwa felt tears of joy welling up in her eyes as she looked at Jaraga. "Father," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "we love you, but we also have a choice to make. We choose our love over politics and duty." King Benene smiled, his eyes shining with happiness. "I knew I could trust you both," he said. "From now on, our kingdom will support your marriage, no matter what the neighboring kingdom says." As the news spread throughout the palace, Serwa and Jaraga were met with cheers and congratulations from their friends and family. The royal ball was a celebration of love and freedom, one that would go down in history as a momentous occasion. The night of the ball arrived, and Serwa and Jaraga exchanged vows in front of their loved ones. They danced under the stars, surrounded by the people they had come to care for most. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Serwa and Jaraga made their way to the palace chapel for a private ceremony. With only a handful of witnesses, they exchanged rings and sealed their love with a kiss. Their marriage was a beautiful blend of tradition and innovation, one that reflected their unique bond as individuals. They spent their days building bridges between their kingdom and the neighboring one, using diplomacy and communication to create a new era of peace and cooperation. As the years passed, Serwa and Jiraga's love continued to grow stronger. They became symbols of hope for their kingdom, proof that even in the darkest of times, love could conquer all. Their children grew up to be wise and compassionate leaders, carrying on their parents' legacy of love and diplomacy. And as they looked out upon the sunset, Serwa and Jiraga knew that their decision had changed the course of history. They had taken a stand for what they believed in: love, freedom, and the power of the human spirit. And in doing so, they had created a new era of peace and prosperity for their kingdom. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Serwa leaned into Jiraga's side, feeling grateful for the day that changed everything. "I'm glad we took that stand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jiraga smiled, his eyes shining with love. "Me too," he said. "Me too." And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Serwa knew that their love would live on forever, a beacon of hope for generations to come. Epilogue. Years went by, and Serwa and Jiraga became one of the most beloved royal couples in the kingdom. Their marriage was filled with laughter, adventure, and love. They built a beautiful palace together, surrounded by lush gardens and a stunning view of the sunset. Their children grew up to be wise and compassionate leaders, just like their parent. They were kind and fair, loved by all who knew them. The kingdom prospered under their rule, becoming a beacon of hope for neighboring lands. One day, when Serwa was old and gray, she sat on her throne, surrounded by Jiraga, their children, and grandchildren. She looked out at the kingdom they had built together, and felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. "Jiraga," she said, her voice weak, but full of emotion, "I'm glad we took that stand." Jiraga smiled, his eyes shining with tears. "Me too, my love," he said. "Me too." And as the sun set over the kingdom, Serwa's hand slipped from Jiraga's grasp, and she passed away, surrounded by her loved ones. But even in death, Serwa's spirit lived on. Her legacy of love and diplomacy inspired future generations, and her story became a legend that would be told for centuries to come. And as for Jiraga, he continued to rule the kingdom with wisdom and compassion, always remembering the day when they took a stand for their love and changed the course of history forever.